for this week. Let's go to the Roto-World player news. And we start off with a banger here, guys. Something that you can kind of feel coming, going all the way back to August, but now it's official with the problems the Raiders have had. Davante Adams clearly wants out. Per Adam Schefter, the Raiders would consider trading him, of course. We also heard from Schefter today, Davante Adams prefers a quarterback he's played with, which means literally the Jets and the Saints.
Yep.
There's some other teams rumored to be interested out there. Matthew, what do we want for Davante Adams in fantasy, though, I think is how we look at this. Because it's been rough this year in the Raiders, so this only has to improve, in theory?
I think you would want, for fantasy, I think you'd want Rodgers or Carr.
Yeah,
both the Saints offense has been really good for much of the year. The Jets offense has shown some flashes. They could certainly use them. Just the familiarity between Rodgers and Davante Adams, and then if you're a defensive coordinator, like all due respect to Mike Williams and Al Lazard, but if you're a defensive coordinator and you're like, I got Garrett Wilson on one side and Davante Adams on another, and oh, by the way, Breece Hall's a threat underneath, pick your poison, right? And so I feel like that would open up a lot of stuff for the Jets offensively. Look, might be fun to have him on the Commanders.
I think it would be a lot of fun to have him on the Commanders.
Fantasy-wise, Pittsburgh's been rumored as well. They were in on Brandon Ayuk until the very end. That didn't end up happening. But I think fantasy-wise, we wouldn't like that. We wouldn't want him to go to Pittsburgh. I think that's what you're hoping for with Davante Adams. Is you want an offense. You want an offense where there are targets available. It's a pass-first offense, and it's a solid quarterback. It's an above-average quarterback. Yeah. That's what you're hoping for.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off you're being realistic. You're not mentioning the Chiefs and the Bills, the Bills would make a ton of sense, but we haven't heard any rumors of that.
Yeah.
Lawrence, I don't think the Raiders would ever trade him to the Chiefs.
That's in division. Come on, man.
I think
we just wasting.
I think that was one of the Schefter tweets was that he said the Chiefs are not currently in consideration. Not among the teams.
It sounds great. Receiver is definitely a need for them.
Sure.
It's gonna be if they're gonna get a receiver, it's gonna be from elsewhere. Not we've seen in division trades, like the Commanders trading
Jahan Dotson,
but that's different. That's we good. We don't. This is just a throwaway. Davante Adams is not a throwaway. He's a top 5 receiver in the league. So that's not gonna happen. But I will say this: if he were to go to a team like the Commanders or even the Pittsburgh Steelers, that would, from a fantasy perspective, that would help the quarterback more so than it helps the receiver. So if you have a Justin Fields or a Jaden Daniels, that helps them more, although I don't know if Jaden Daniels needs
I will say this.
help.
I think, honestly, for fantasy, what we're really rooting for is just a trade. Just period.
Yeah.
Just
And
get
it's
him
gonna
out
happen.
of there.
It's gonna happen.
Because it's clearly going back to Jimmy Garoppolo last year and it hasn't seemed like even towards the end of Derek Carr being there and they got rid of him, it just hasn't felt great for Adams in Las Vegas for a couple of seasons now. And so I think a fresh start for Adams and for the team just would be good for both players. So he's not going to go to a worse quarterback situation than Gardner Minshew, and he's hard. It's hard to see him going to a situation where he has more target competition than he did with Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers. He's still Davante Adams. He's always going to demand targets wherever he goes. So I think just any trade would be good for his fantasy value, and certainly should he get dealt, see if he's still. I haven't looked at what his roster percentage is, but last week, our own Denny Carter told you what the mainstream media wouldn't. Trey Tucker's a thing, and so we would expect a bigger role for Trey Tucker. He would be a nice preemptive pickup if through waivers he's still out there in your league. I know he's a popular pickup this week. We talked about him on the waiver show yesterday, and obviously we talked about him last Friday with Denny. But Trey Tucker would get an up boost, and obviously Jacoby Myers as well. Jacoby Myers, is probably out there in a few leagues as well. Probably 80% rostered or something like that.
As we get closer to Thursday Night Football, some injuries to keep an eye on. Mike Evans with knee and calf injuries was limited in practice on Tuesday. Bijan Robinson was limited in practice as well with a hamstring. As we know, Thursday Night Football, sometimes those guys need a rest on the Tuesday. So keep an eye on those. And then ones we'll be tracking all throughout the week. Anthony Richardson is going to be day-to-day right now with the oblique and abdominal injuries. So that could be a Joe Flacco game. We'll see. Jonathan Taylor with the the ankle sprain that just nobody could figure out the definition of it at this
mild
point.
high ankle sprain. That makes no sense.
Because if it's a high ankle, you'd think Jonathan Taylor's missing multiple weeks, but they're acting like he might be able to play this week, so we'll keep an eye on it.
Right. Which is, if he does, it's not a high ankle sprain.
There's
like,
no
can
way.
you run and cut?
Right.
Right. Joe Mixon still dealing with an ankle. Raheem Mostert has not been back from that chest injury, although he was a game-time decision last week for Monday Night Football. George Kittle with the rib injury. Trey McBride is still in concussion protocol, so we'll keep an eye on that one going throughout the week.
As is Austin Eckler. He's not on the screen, but he's also in the concussion protocol as well. And then a bunch of all those tight end injuries, right? You know, Ingram and Njoku. You know, we're waiting to see on Malik Neighbors, of course, and we already talked about Rashee Rice.
Dominate this NFL season with a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. Get weekly rankings, start sit advice, DFS analysis, and betting tools. Use promo code SEASON20 for 20% off. Go to fantasylife.com/rotoworld to learn more. We're taking our first break. When we're back, we'll debate if we're taking any wide receiver over Nico Collins if we drafted today. Who's eating good? Coming right up.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.